You definitely need that. So you're leading me to the reason I wanted to bring you back, because it has been a while. It was September of 2018 last time you were on, and you and I, you probably don't remember this. It's probably been close to a
Yeah, we
year
fought
now.
about. I think we fought about we fought about New Jack and
We were
the guy.
going back. We were going back and forth about about New Jack and the Gangsters. And Bruce, I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, and let me state my feelings on it because on Twitter, a lot of times you can't communicate what you really want to say in long form. It's just it's a Twitter is just not the place to discuss things you disagree on things with your friends or anyone about. But in my opinion, but so for me and Doc and Harper, my co-host that I've done the Smoky Mountain show with now for almost 3 years and 9 months as we come to an end of it, is we loved the Gangstas in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and we understand. I think I understand your point. I've heard your points about how um, correct me if I'm wrong. Like you thought Corny was trying to start a race war and all these
No,
different
no, I
things.
didn't see
Oh,
Corny was
okay,
trying to start a
okay,
race.
okay.
No.
That's what I say.
Yeah.
Correct me,
Okay.
Bruce.
Yeah. Yeah.
I okay. But I take it at least. Well, let me say it like this. I think you didn't like it, but we loved it because we felt well. He was trying to do something that to spark things in his territory. And then let me say one more thing too, from a story Tracy Smothers told me when he was on the show a few years ago. Tracy Smothers and I were talking about when they brought the Gangsters in. And the day the Gangsters debuted in that small gymnasium, Ricky Morton was watching the monitor when the Gangsters went out. And Ricky Morton was like, man, we're about to make some money with this. So even a guy like Ricky Morton, according to Tracy Smothers, was like, man, they and wait, I'm saying debut. I can't remember. I can't remember if it was the day they debuted
Yeah.
or
It's
after.
fine. Yeah.
But the point,
Whenever when he first saw them. Yeah.
when he
Yeah.
first saw him, he was like, "Oh, Jimmy, we're about to make some money with this." So I go back to what I'm saying. I think there was a lot of racially, obviously motivated things in the angle, but we loved it. We thought that, hey, they're trying. There were some crazy promos. I mean, New Jack, we got two less to worry about. I mean, he said some insane things, but we really liked it. We thought it was good TV when New Jack and the Gangsters were in Smoky Mountain for their run. Now, again, I think you differed with our opinion on it, and I wanted to talk to you about it just to kind of understand more why you didn't like it so much, and correct me if I misstated anything.
No, no. And well, here's the thing. What you're saying is true. Like for you, it's like you liked it. Your friends liked it. You enjoyed it. That's all. And that's something I'm not, that I'm not taking away from that at all. I thought it was bad business. And, I thought I was in a car and traveling around the Smoky Mountain for a week or so around the time of the big Pikeville, Kentucky show when the Rock and Roll Express had their showdown with the Heavenly Bodies, and one of the best shows I ever saw, Loser Leave Town, and all that. And for a day or so, I was traveling with Cornette, and he was telling me about this idea for the Gangsters and how there's no such thing as too much heat, and that was what I wrote about. There is something. There's too much thing. There's such a thing as too much heat, and that was and what I did, I went to and I proved it because I thought I was writing something that was so ridiculously racist that it was laughable, but it was also like would make the point there's something that's too much, there's too much heat. And Cornette, it made Cornette furious, and he's been furious with me to this day. And there were parts of it, like I used some of the names of some of the women who worked in Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and I checked it out with them. I said, "Do you think this is funny?" And they're like, "Yeah, okay." They're like, "Yeah, we love it." And then, when Cornette reacted the way he did, some of them changed their mind, some of them didn't. But here's the thing. But here's the thing. It didn't work. Like I didn't think it would work, and it didn't work. Like his business went down, and they had race riot is such what they're such a term. Like right now, today as we're recording this, I would say what I would consider race riot is going on right now in Minneapolis. That it's that there are riots going on, and they are motivated by a feeling of people of hopelessness of not having any racial justice and wanting to see some justice and trying to take it out of the legal system where they have no faith, and taking it into the street. And and what it always does to me is damage the very neighborhoods that are being damaged already. But anyway, that's a race riot. I'm not sure what happened in Wise, Virginia was a race riot, but that was what the law enforcement said. And I think Cornette's even said this, and he never admits to anything wrong. And I think that's a real bad thing. But he said this not in so many ways. But when you're running it, when you're the owner and you're the promoter and you're also the lead heel, and you're getting and you're Caucasian, and your wrestlers are Caucasian, and you're getting in a fight with some black kids, and there's no rules in a cuss war, and you're calling them the N-word. And what you're going to do is take a bad situation and make it a lot worse. I mean, part of the deal is make your money, keep everybody fairly safe, and get the hell out of Dodge and come back the next time and make some more money. And if you're not allowed back and you've left a bad, if you left a bad taste, then you've done bad business. My thing was this was bad business. I also thought that Cornette doing what he did, he set up the Gangstas as these heels, and I bet you didn't hate them. See, part of my point with this stuff was that he was coming into what he thought was, and it was rural areas up in the mountains, and that those kids weren't watching TBS, and they weren't watching USA, and they had satellite television. They had, I'd lived in Beckley not just a few years before that, and I could tell you, it's like, the technology was making the world smaller, and he thought, since they're not promoting all the time, and I'll be promoting here, I'll have a local promotion, and that was, and that was the big mistake, where it wasn't going to be ever seen as major league. And I wish that wasn't true. I like Smoky Mountain Wrestling a lot, and I wish it wasn't true, but you couldn't have whoever is on top in Bret Hart and The Undertaker and whoever in WWE and in WCW, Sting and everybody else, and then headline with the Rock and Roll Express and the Fullers and the Goldens and the guys from years ago in something that seemed like it was minor league, and it was actually a better run in a lot of ways creatively, but it was minor league. And but anyway, Cornette took himself and had And New Jack was a really talented talker. Those guys are bad wrestlers, but they were really talented talkers. Had them say those things that got them in trouble. They got the stations mad at them. They got them all that, and they didn't make more money off it. I understand getting more heat, but more money. But they weren't making more money off it. Then he turned himself babyface, managed the Rock and Roll Express, and to me, talking to him, I thought this is a guy that was tired of hearing Reverend Al Sharpton and wanted to talk back to Reverend Al Sharpton, so he brought in the closest wrestling thing you could have, which was Jerome Young from Greensboro, North Carolina, playing New Jack, and did it, and then did and the crowds went down, and they did that stuff, but he got to make his speeches. Cornette got to make his speeches back, and do that stuff, but it was something that. It damaged the company when it didn't need to be damaged, and he was going for home runs, because the other thing he was doing a lot of was a lot of bait and switch that he'd seen in Memphis, and it worked in Memphis because Memphis had also delivered a ton of times, and Smoky Mountain was still 2 or 3 years old, and it didn't work there, and so he wasn't used to like hearing some back from that, and he wasn't happy with that criticism of bait and switch. But I mean, the thing with the Gangstas was that there is a wrong kind of heat. If you're causing people in the crowd to get into fights, if you're causing them to, if you're causing somebody to get so upset they're going to come get the Gangstas and kill them, then, and wrestling's had that type of heat before, and you're not making more money at it, then that can be a problem. You can say things, it's an art to it. And Cornette's been, an artist at it in many ways. He's not now, but in many ways he was really good at going right to the limit and not too far and drawing the money. And then also calming everybody down before they left by, taking the beating, or having Ronnie Garvin, beat his ass after he threw the fire at him, or what he did with Baby Doll. It's there's an art to it. There's an art to going right up to the edge and not too far. And with the Gangstas, yeah, it was entertaining, but it hurt. I mean, some of what they did, being scared in the graveyard and all that, that's Amos and Andy time. Like they did some of that crap, but the old black people are scared of spooks and that kind of crap, and that's just offensive. But that's where and some of the things they did along that way, it hurt the promotion. And that's where I would say, like, if they thought it was going to be money, maybe they did, and maybe they looked at it and thought it was going to be money, but it wasn't.
You said a couple of things, and just so we don't confuse anyone out there, I know you had brought up Weiss, Virginia, and I mentioned the whole race riot thing. That to be fair, that was before the Gangstas, and I did read Wade's report years later.
Before the Gangstas, I get really confused about that. Was that before the Gangstas? I thought it was after.
Yeah.
Maybe it was.
No. It was Weiss, Virginia. That happened before the Gangstas, but I want to say something about that because I totally agree with you. I read the report and have read what Corny said about the N-word. Totally disagree with him on that fact. I don't. It's in my opinion, it's not. It's not even up for debate. He should not have gone there because all it does is incite things a little bit worse. I hear what he said. I read the article. I think he even admitted to saying it. And yeah, I don't agree with that. I don't think
very much. He admitted he said it. And he justified it by saying there are no rules in a cuss fight,
right?
Which he lives his life by. But in that case, there should have been. In that case, it should have been, I'm the owner, I'm the promoter. Let's calm this down instead of I'm not backing down.
Right.
That's that kind of stuff. And even wrestlers, it's like there's if a wrestler causes a fight and then they're banned, and then the promotion is banned from the building where they made money. That's a bad deal,
Yeah. Well, and in Weiss, like I said, it was before the Gangstas, so I don't want to confuse the listeners to think that happened with the Gangstas.
I'm confused by that. I'm sorry.
No, Bruce. Believe me, I am the worst. The only reason I remember this so well is Bobby Blaze and I had a long talk about Weiss, Virginia, because he was there, and Bobby totally agrees that word should not have been used, but he also, as someone who was an eyewitness to it all, said it was not a race riot, it just was a wrestling riot. Now, did that word...
I agree with that. That wasn't... And the thing about that term, that's why I said, like, what's going on in Minneapolis right now is one. But that wasn't one. That was a term that law enforcement used and got quoted in the Torch and quoted to Wade as he wrote that.
Right. So it got legs at that point.
But it's like I disagree with it too, because I think there's more to a race riot than that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to make that point as we talk about what everything else. Now, the other thing about the Gangstas not working in Smoky. So I actually, when Cornette was either the first or second time, he's been on the show multiple times, either the first or second time he was on with us, we talked to him about the Gangstas, and he actually admitted that it didn't work because the big towns, the Johnson cities, the Knoxvilles, and places like that, it worked. It was okay. But the little towns, he said, it didn't work because the people wouldn't come. They were so upset and so offended by New Jack and Mustafa that they just didn't come. And in the other issue, he talked about
there's too much heat. Yeah,
there was. Yeah, it was literally too much heat.
Yeah, the wrong kind of
heat.
Yeah.
It pushed it. Yeah. It pushed the fans away. So I agree with you there. And then he even talked about, like, his buddy Ken Cantrell, who listens to this show. Ken, he was a part of the volunteer fire department, and they walked the Gangstas to the ring as quote unquote security, and they're getting threats because they walk these angry black men to the ring at a few shows. So I totally agree with you there from that point of view. One thing I want to mention though, when we talk about the Gangstas not working, all of that said, wrestling was also not in a good financial place overall when Smoky was in its heyday. So, I feel it would be unfair and unjust to, leave that point out when we say, well, the Gangstas didn't work. Because to be fair, Smoky didn't work as a whole, but it didn't have anything, in my opinion, to do with the overall booking of the 3 years and 9 months of the promotion. Is that fair to say, in your opinion? Would you agree or disagree?
I would say everything's in context, everything's of the time and period that it's in, and that was the time and period that it's in, and there's no doubt about it. I would say that there were times when Cornette booking, when I'm talking about these are big things, he would bait and switch too often. But as far as solid booking, yeah, it was a solidly booked territory. But I know that he wouldn't have brought the Gangstas in. That was that was kind of a home run swing. I remember talking to him about before he ever did it, and then he was like, we need something, and they did, and then also his idea and I don't think of Cornette as a behind it until lately. I don't think of until last year or so. I don't think of Cornette anywhere near as old school, all that, old fashioned stuff. But this was an old fashioned promotion at a time he didn't realize that everybody, including the people in the hollers, were watching the same television. And that part of it, I think, he couldn't be Major League Wrestling no matter how good a job he was doing with the booking and how, and how Southern he did in a Southern holler. It was still going to be not Major League. That was, and he had that impossible choice of, do I bring in, The Undertaker or Shawn Michaels? Do I bring in Bill Watts and try to, and guys from WCW and try to poke it there? And they'll think these shows are Major League, but they won't come back to the shows with just your regular crew. I mean, it's, so yeah, but I think his booking was solid. I mean, it's you can go back and watch this stuff and it tells a story, and the right people are the heels and the right people are the baby faces. And it makes sense. And it's not, and it's not they start something and they forget about it. So yeah, it was, and I loved how he started the promotion. I mean, he built a foundation. He didn't just start everything on the first show. And so there's a lot that was good with it, but yeah, the Gangstas, I mean, it was, and it was not going, if you're, I think of it like people always praise Kevin Sullivan in Florida, Kevin Sullivan and the Abuda Dean stuff and all that. And I'm like, I get why Mark Lewin coming out of the beach is tremendous. I mean, I get that, as far as a piece of entertainment, but but the business went down. And, Eddie Graham was having problems and Dusty Rhodes didn't want to stay around and he was kind of worn out as a top guy and all that. But it caused them to lose, business. People stopped coming. People stopped, they had a harder time booking shows. They had a harder time. They got more complaints on television stations. It hurt their relations with different things because they were, worshiping the devil on TV. And as ridiculous as that sounds, I mean, that's part of it too. It's is the risk worth the reward? And to me, the Gangstas in Smoky Mountain turned out not to be, and I didn't think it would be either. I mean, I thought, if you're right, that racial issues are, in America now and back then and back 100 years before that, they are the place that you can, that people's emotions are right on the line, and that is not where you want to be as far as running of performance is so that's what I would say. It's just did I think that New Jack cut good promos? Yeah, I did. Did I think that the story made sense? Yeah, I did. Did I think that Jim Cornette turning himself into a hero for the white man to talk back to the Al Sharpton figure? I wasn't crazy about that. I thought that was like self-indulgent. But
See that's a fair Bruce. I hate to interrupt because you're good, you're
yeah.
great when you're on the roll, but that's a fair point related to the angle. So like when people hear, well, Bruce Mitchell thinks that bringing in the Gangsters or Smoky Mountain Wrestling it was not a good idea, or he didn't like it because of this. Like they don't hear that exact point, and that's exactly why I wanted to bring you on to talk about it, because that part, when you phrase it like that, I agree with you, because he tried to like leverage them in that instance. Now, again, I'm not blaming Corny as much. I mean, he is the booker, but the thing is, like, I understand he was just trying to do what he felt what was best for his promotion at the time. But I see your point when you say you didn't like that part.
Of course he was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'll say this is like, Cornette, this sounds like just the most simple thing in the world, and Cornette was always and the most clear thing in the world. Like the whole point of professional wrestling is drawing money to your promotion, like drawing business to your promotion and then making money off of it. It isn't I hear all this stuff about art and passion and all that, and I'm like, great. You need to work hard at your job. You need to figure out ways to do stuff, but if you're drawing money, you've got the art because you're building that bond with fans to come, and the fans are if you watch empty arena wrestling, it's like it's missing something because the fans aren't pouring their energy into it. But also it's like that's where the money comes. And so all these other things that you talk about, it's like he did it for the business, and he should, and he did the right things for the business. And in this case, I think he did something that didn't work. But I know I met New Jack. It's funny to me. I had to go to Philadelphia to meet New Jack. But anyway, I met New Jack after he left Smoky Mountain, and before it was, I think, the second time he was at the ECW arena, and I went up there and I spent like 45 minutes talking to him about Smoky Mountain and about ECW, and he kind of saw it the same way in a lot of ways. I remember that, and then of course I haven't seen him since, and a lot of things have changed since then. But it was. I think like that was the and also Cornette was looking for new things to do with the same crew, and the crew was aging out. Stan Lane was wanting to go do something else, and rock and roll. I love them now. I love them then, but it was like they were older then, and it was and then wrestling was struggling too. The major league wrestling was doing a bad job, so he had to fight all of that.
Yeah,
so
he
get why he did it. I get what he was doing, but I think he learned from it too. I think when he went to work in Ohio for Ohio Valley, it's like he started a lot. He did a good job with a lot of talent, and he didn't try to like recreate anything there. He tried to move on, and I think in Ring of Honor he was kind of misunderstood some, but it's like he did some stuff there too. Like he kept up with the wrestling business until just a few years ago.
Yeah, I don't know. He's been ranting as of late on his on the AEW.
I'll put it like this: he kept up with the purpose. Like
yeah, I got you.
Now it's like it doesn't matter if they draw money; they suck. I'm going to shoot them. Or like I'm going to do that. Like it didn't work, and like well. Like Kenny Omega ruined his career by wrestling with a sex doll. It's like, okay, I understand that. That was an insult. I get that. But it didn't ruin his career. He headlined Tokyo Dome. He's a top guy now. It's like he's not, it's like, and that's more a personality thing of if you're never wrong, when life proves that you're wrong and you don't learn from it, you just get further and further out on this limb, and he's way out on these limbs now. But he didn't used to be, and he wasn't for a long time. But yeah, there was stuff that the Gangsters did, particularly New Jack, that I thought was dead on good promos. But I also think the one that what's the one he's most remembered for? I'll ask you that. I'll put it like that.
Well, it's hard to argue against the first one because everybody reflects back to, there's two less of you to worry about. And then, but let me keep going because I remember so many of these. There's the one with the chicken and watermelon too that he cut. So, I mean, like there's a lot to to go from when you talk about New Jack, but those two come to mind, and those were some of the first
Yeah,
ones.
both of them, and the first one, I remember watching. Like I was getting Smoky Mountain tapes, and Casey O'Connor was there, and I had a good source for it, and I remember watching that, going, "Holy crap!" But I also knew the look on Bob Caudle's face, and that Bob Caudle was, um, not a crazy, like a normal, respectable, mainstream white Republican American, and he wasn't going for that. And like, to me, when you have that, when you lose that, it was like, that's gonna be like, I thought, boy, that was a lot. That took a lot of balls, and I liked it in that sense. And I laughed because it was just so bad. The murderer, the murderer killed two of y'all, and and then the whole thing of OJ, who was anything but, you know, a, a black supremacist. I mean, like that he was, before that. I grew up with him being being the most likable black man in America before he murdered those two. And
Oh yeah, I mean, as a kid, I remember him doing Monday Night
image.
Football,
And
and
so I was like, wow. I was laughing at the audacity of it, and but I also thought, that's gonna cause you problems, and it did. It's like, they lost Caudle over it, and they lost some other things over it, and so as it went along, and yeah, and if you got and you've got this atmosphere in small towns, and atmosphere of some of the bigger towns too, that was like the wrong kind of thing. If you're marketing to families, and they were, I mean, and I'm not a big, like, wrestling should market to families guys. You're marketing fights, but they wanted to have kids come too. And if you create an atmosphere that makes adults scream, kind of squeamish about it, or a little not so happy, then you're going to lose teenagers, you're going to lose kids, and you're going to lose adults too. And they did.
real quick, the Bob Caudle thing. According to Cornette, I got this from him when he was on. Bob was just getting older, driving all these towns, for the TV tapings, and bringing his wife, and that's why Bob left. It didn't have anything to do with New Jack. That's what I was
Okay.
told. That's the only reason why I
Okay, fair
mentioned
enough.
that.
Fair enough. My understanding was that a little bit too, but I think a lot of it had to be like driving from, living in Raleigh and driving to, wherever it is, Tennessee, to do a television taping.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and he was getting older, and he had the job with, was Helm still around at that point? But anyway, he had those jobs. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. So
Yeah,
that's fine.
that's it's just I wanted to mention that as
Okay.
what I was told.